Hey, my name is Aiden Carpenter, and I'm an intern here at the Center for Research in Vermont. Today, I will be interviewing Kevin Chu as part of our ongoing interview series. The center and the series has kind of been shifting the focus a lot on sustainability and diversity in Vermont's future, and that's why Kevin's an amazing guest. Kevin is the executive director at the Center, oh my God, not the Center for Research in Vermont, at the Vermont Futures Project, and I'm very, very happy to have him here with me as a guest. Is there anything you want to say about yourself, any introductions?
Yeah, thank you, Aiden. Thanks for having me on as a guest. So, as Aiden said, my name is Kevin Chu. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the executive director of the Vermont Futures Project. I joined this team at the beginning of the calendar year, and it's been an incredible learning journey for me. And I'm just looking forward to sharing my story with you. Thanks again for having me, Aiden.
Oh, of course. I'm so excited to have you. So I guess first talking about you, where are you from? How'd you end up in Vermont? All that fun story.
Yeah, great. That can be a loaded question in a place like Vermont. Where am I from? I'm from Burlington. I grew up in Vermont. I like to say I grew up in Vermont, and I look forward to growing old in Vermont too. So my parents immigrated from Southeast China in 1986, and they ended up here in Vermont because I have an aunt who married an American. They had a home in Shelburne at that time. Otherwise, the connection between Southeast China and Vermont isn't a particularly strong one. A lot of Chinese immigrants end up on the West Coast. It's just a shorter plane ride. So my parents came here, and they were leaving an agricultural community where there were limited economic opportunities. So they came here on the promise of the American dream. They were looking for opportunities for their children to be able to have a better life than what they had through hard work. They believed in the meritocracy. But we found something better than the American dream. It's what I call the Vermont Dream. And you'll see why this role with the Futures Project is so exciting for me. I think there's values embedded in the fabric of Vermont that really weave in the community, the environment, the place in which we live. Right, it's a beautiful state to raise a family. So that commitment to the environment, to equity, and those economic opportunities, that trio is what I call the Vermont Dream.
That's beautiful. I guess asking then, so what does your career path really look like to getting you to the Vermont Futures Project? You've been in Vermont the whole time doing a lot of work, so.
Yeah, I've been in Vermont for most of it. I did spend 1 year away at a boarding school in Connecticut called Kent School. So I'll start off with sort of the process of living and learning and education in my early years and how that ties into my professional career. So as I mentioned, I grew up in Burlington during a pretty special time when there was an influx of immigrants and refugees from all over the world. And I feel like in those early years, I got a glimpse of what the future of Vermont could look like. I thought Vermont was a diverse place for the first 10 years of my life. Then I attended Middlebury College, and I was an environmental studies major with an education minor. And through that educational process, it led me to a place where I thought I wanted to be a classroom teacher. I did student teaching at Middlebury Union High School. I taught ninth grade earth science. And that, as I reflect on sort of the moments in my life that really shaped my thinking, that was one of them. About half of the students in my class were children of college professors. And then the other half, many of them grew up on family farms, and I had a group of boys. I can remember the conversation quite vividly that told me they planned on dropping out when they were 16. They were taking over the family farm. That was sort of the identity that they grew up with and their perceived path forward. And many teachers would say to those kids, you have to stay in school, you have to go to four-year college. It's the only pathway to economic success. And we know that's not true. I'm not advocating against education. I'm actually saying that education can happen everywhere all the time, and that if we limit how we conceive of education to what happens inside of a school building, then we're really limiting the opportunities for our community to grow collectively in all moments that we're together, whether it's inside of a school or outside. And again, I think this is informed by my lived experiences in a diverse community growing up. I learned so much from my peers on the playground, or just sitting and chatting over lunch, and hearing sort of how they see the world. So I know that it can happen in all parts of our state. And when I had that student teaching experience in Addison County, I had to understand the lived experience of these children that grew up in a very different environment than myself, and then find common ground. And I would say to them, I want you to be the best farmer you can be. So in order to do that, I think you need to know some science. And that's where we were able to work together, because I validated their identity and how they wanted to move forward with their lives. So after student teaching, I continued in the field of education, moving up the road, up Route 7, and kicking off my time at the University of Vermont, where I spent the last 6 years of my professional career. So the first role that I had at UVM was in the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. And it was another one of these eye-opening moments for me, where I reflect on what has informed my view of my current work with the Futures Project. So, we have a variety of definitions of who is a Vermonter, like how many generations of has your family been here, or were you born here, et cetera, et cetera. I was working with students and families in other states, recruiting in New York City, and these students wanted to be in Vermont. They wanted to come here to learn, to attend UVM, but many of them also saw a life beyond graduation in Vermont. They were looking for ways to stay. They were seeking those opportunities to be able to call themselves Vermonters. And they too should have that right. If they are coming here, they choose to be here, they want to contribute to our communities, then yeah, we should call them Vermonters. So that experience really stuck with me. And I carried that through to some of my other work at the university as well. So I worked as an academic advisor, really sort of serving as an academic coach of sorts, to help students sort of unlock the potential of their experiences and think about how to put those into action beyond the classroom. From that advising role, I transitioned to doing some communications work and strategic planning for the Rubenstein School. And then the last role I held at the university prior to joining the Futures Project was in the Office of Engagement as the managing director. So really focusing on workforce and economic development in partnership with the state of Vermont. And we're in this moment where there are workforce challenges across the state, really across the country. And if we look at the single greatest source of young talent in our state, it's the University of Vermont. Every freshman class is about 2,500 students, and about 70% of them come from out of state. So this partnership between UVM and the state, and being intentional about both our recruitment and retention efforts, I think will have a pretty big impact on the future of Vermont. And through that work with the office, that's how I got to know the Futures Project. We collaborated to put together an economic resilience report. And in some ways, the work that I'm doing now with the Futures Project feels like a continuation of some of the work that I was doing for the Office of Engagement. But instead of thinking through the lens of UVM, I'm thinking on a statewide scale now.
I mean, I can definitely see how the two would connect. Like, the end part of your work at UVM was really focused on retention. And I know that's a lot of what the Futures Project does in terms of trying to get people to stay here and stop like the brain drain. But as a serious thing, if you bring people into the state and they don't stay in the state, what's the point? I do understand. I guess then to really transition more to your current work then with the Vermont Futures Project, how is it different from the work you did at UVM other than just like the scale?
Sure. Yeah, so the Vermont Futures Project, we're an independent, nonpartisan organization that provides a vision to support and encourage long-term economic growth for Vermont. And we do this through providing data and recommendations to help achieve that goal. We try to position the economy in the center of conversations that are happening statewide about Vermont's future. So the mission is driven by both research and education to demonstrate how a healthy economy provides opportunities for people in our state and contributes to Vermont's unique quality of life. The work of the Futures Project so far, you can check out our website at vtfuturesproject.org, and you'll see that we track over 100 different data sets that give you an indication of the health of our economy. When we have these conversations, it's good to be able to bring that data, this objective source to serve as the foundation of conversations. It makes planning a lot easier. And certainly we want to also include the voices and the narratives of individuals, and the emotions of how people relate to the economy also really matter in this work. And it's sort of that sweet spot between the qualitative and quantitative that help to inform the vision moving forward. The work of the Futures Project, I'd say what differentiates our organization from many other organizations out there is that future-oriented lens. So yes, we need to examine what's happening in the here and now. We need to look at sort of historical patterns, but we also want to provide a path forward as well, and to provide hope. We were just talking about the in-migration of students, and we've also seen with COVID an in-migration of people to the state. So what is it that they're attracted to about Vermont, and can we build on some of those strengths? And to do so in a way that coordinates sort of a statewide strategy, so we're all pulling in the same direction. I think one of the beautiful things about working on the future is, as soon as we get to tomorrow, there's a new tomorrow. So there's always something interesting to work on and work towards. I remember on a bike ride once from Burlington down to Middlebury, I stopped in a little general store in Moncton, and there was a sign that said, "Free beer tomorrow." And what's sort of hilarious and beautiful about that is, I could show up the next day hoping to get free beer, and the sign is still going to say "Free beer tomorrow." Because as soon as we get to tomorrow, there's a new tomorrow. And I feel the same way about the work that I'm doing now. It's like we can work towards some short-term goals, and when we get there, we can continue to envision what the future looks like. And just thinking back to that the free beer sign, "Free beer tomorrow," right? What I think sort of is embedded in that is a sense of hope, right? If we can infuse hope in how we perceive tomorrow, we're going to look forward to tomorrow.
That's beautiful. And I think that whole point about being able to rapidly shift what you're doing, reading between the lines, it sounds like as an organization, you're kind of able to rapidly shift about what you're doing and what you're focusing on in the short term in order to go towards that longer term goal of a better Vermont and a better future for Vermont. But to kind of ask, what does that look like? One, for you personally, but then also for the organization. I've read your mission statement, but to put it in layman's terms, how would you really put it?
Yeah, that Vermont is a place of opportunity for all people, whether they're here in the state now or they're elsewhere. If they end up here, this is a place of opportunity.
That's beautiful. Connects back to the American dream and everything. It connects back to why you're here and the American dream, pushing your family here.
And I'd say we can do even better than that. And that's the Vermont dream. And I think, the way that we sort of approach economic development in the state of Vermont is unique, because we do have these values of community, of the environment, of equity. And oftentimes they're pitted against each other, these perspectives, these lenses, as if we can make progress in one area and it's directly in competition with another. But I think there is a way to synthesize all three frameworks, the environment, equity, and the economy, in a way that works for everyone, and provides those opportunities that I referenced.
Yeah. And I guess asking what is like the favorite part of your work, whether that be like the unique interactions you get to have or like unique projects you really get to work on and focus on? Like, what about your work really makes you happy and makes you feel like, end of the day, yes, I am contributing something amazing to this state?
I mentioned the word hope earlier, and that's my favorite part of the work. And the hope comes from my fellow Vermonters, the people that I talk to, business leaders, community leaders, educators, the children. They provide so much hope. I think there is a sense of possibility for Vermont to be an amazing place, not only today, but moving forward as well. And the work that I do helps to highlight those experiences and to coalesce the knowledge. And there's just so much willingness from Vermonters to contribute to a statewide vision that, it brings me hope on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you. I guess I wanted to dig in a little more and get something specific, like
Yeah.
a really specific project that you can point to and hear like the like tangible parts of what you do.
So the Vermont Futures Project has this vision over the next couple of years to actually put together a statewide economic plan.
Yes.
That is going to be the project that we pursue, the tangible product. And if you look at the current plan, there's a SEDS plan, a comprehensive economic development strategy that was developed in 2014 by the Agency of Commerce and Community Development, and you can find it on their website. And then there are some regional plans as well, because there is variability from region to region, right? What happens in Chittenden County is very different than what happens in Rutland. It's very different than what happens in the Northeast Kingdom or Brattleboro. And there's amazing work happening all across the state. So that last statewide plan, the SEDS, as I mentioned, it was in 2014. It was supposed to provide a roadmap for 2014 to 2020. It was supposed to be updated each year. I think it got updated for 2 years, and it's just been sort of sitting idle since. And I think there's an opportunity, and again, this is where the Futures Project, we see our role in helping to lead this initiative to put together a statewide plan. So then we can start thinking about the next decade, the next 2 decades, and again, leverage the strengths of our regions to contribute to an overall statewide plan.
I guess a few questions then about that. One, what are you all really focusing on as you do that, as you go in the future? Like, is there a focus on sustainability? Is there a focus on supporting local business and local development? Is there some big push for, oh, we want to trade with Canada more, like whatever that may be?
Yeah, there are going to be elements of all of that. But if there's one topic that I'd point you towards that's been our focus, it's on population. So if you dig into that a little bit deeper, right, population is just the total number, and the latest census estimates put Vermont at around 643,000. So a little bit of growth in the past decade, but really Vermont's population has been quite stagnant for several decades now. And if we dig a layer deeper, then we have to look at demographics. What's the demographic mix? We see it all the time in media stories. We have an aging population, and we have a relatively white population compared to the U.S. averages. And Vermont doesn't exist in isolation. We don't exist in a bubble. We are participants in a global economy. So our population right now sort of leaves us in a vulnerable place when we think about the future, right? It means there's an opportunity to address it. How do we grow our population so then we have the workers to really drive business growth? How do we add to our population in a way that diversifies our community so then we are competitive in a global market because we have perspectives represented in how we operate our organizations? So population and its intersection and relationship with the economy is going to be one of the key focuses of how we approach the plan. Because if we dig into how population connects, it connects to everything. Housing, that's a big topic right now. If we try to add more people, then we also have to talk about housing. It impacts taxes, right? The more people there are, potentially the more taxpayers. So how does it impact revenue for government? And we have to talk about childcare. We have to talk about education. So population is the starting point for how we're approaching the economic plan.
Okay. I guess I know the plan isn't done yet, so there's no like concrete answer, but what are really the recommendations around population, whether that be in terms of increasing the pure number of people, lowering the like average age, or increasing like diversity in the demographics? What do you all see as like some of the solutions?
Yeah, you're hitting on some of the key points there. And I think you can ask most people and they'll give you those same answers. But the question is how.
Yeah.
And that's where a plan can really have an impact, especially when we're thinking about a statewide scale and coordinating strategies. Yes, there are those regional plans. If they're all contributing towards the shared vision, then we can start to answer how. Right? Where, if we're going to bring people in, then where are they going to live? How are they going to access childcare, healthcare, education? What are the industries that are growing or shrinking? How do we do workforce development to prepare people for the industry mix that's unique to Vermont? So yes, you hit it right on the nail there in terms of we want to grow the population, we want to become more diverse, we want to have young talent in the state, but the key question is how.
I guess.
Do you have any answers?
Do I have any answers? I mean, I think Vermont and a lot of the attempts at retention don't do a great job at trying to bring people who love Vermont for what it already is into the state. It's a lot of focus on like, oh, we're gonna like develop our urban centers more in order to pull people from other small cities into Burlington, into Brattleboro, into Montpelier. Instead of really focusing on like we have a beautiful rural life here, getting the people who are super interested in that, who want like the big escape from the city, who want the escape from like, say you're living rural in the middle of Wyoming, you want somewhere, I was gonna say warmer, but we are technically a little warmer than Wyoming. Yeah, you come here, somewhere a little warmer. That's really what I see. I think Vermont, going back to all of the classic asset-based community development, Vermont doesn't do a great job of highlighting what it already has. It's trying to constantly like change and shift into something instead of saying like, oh, we have a ton of land, we have a ton of like beautiful nature, let's like win people over with that. It doesn't do a great job of like really focusing on the migrant communities that are already here. If you give those communities a real like foothold here and make them feel comfortable enough to really push and get the people from like their original homelands to feel comfortable and move up to Vermont, that's a great stream of like people into the state. I don't think is really highlighted or worked on.
Oh, thanks for sharing your thoughts. So I should have mentioned when starting the conversation about the economic plan that it's not going to be a solo endeavor where the Futures Project writes it and then just tells everyone what to do. It's going to be collaborative by nature. We're looking for partners. We're looking for contributors. It should really represent the voice of the people. And I just want to thank you for sharing your thoughts because this will be part of the process for building the plan.
Oh, definitely. I guess in asking then, how do you plan on getting input from like the wider Vermont community? And what does that process look like, whether it's like an online thing or like a big open forum?
Sure. Yeah. So we're not building this thing from scratch. There are already versions out there of existing plans that we can definitely build from. So I just want to put that out there that this is not a new idea. but it's the right time to at least revamp and update it and modernize it. So I think you're exactly right in that the next phase is really thinking about the tactics of engagement. So there's going to be, ways for anyone to be able to contribute their thoughts. And then I think there have to be events that get key players together. And again, because there are existing plans out there and this work isn't new, we want to engage those key partners to be able to leverage the work that they've already done and highlight it and bring it forward in a new way. I'm also really sort of deep in my thinking of how we deploy a plan too, because one of the things that you'll probably find with a lot of these planning documents is there's so much incredible work that goes into building them, and they end up either on shelves or as a link on a web page to a 100 plus page PDF. Again, it represents a lot of great work, but how do we deploy that in a different format that's more engaging and more accessible too? Accessibility is certainly a consideration here, because I want Vermonters to know that they are active participants in the economy, that the economy isn't just something that happens to them. So we need to give them access points to be able to learn and feel like they're active participants. So there's going to be a revamp of our website to really consider how to deploy an economic plan in a modern way.
It's beautiful. I guess here's a fun comment from Common Good Vermont. What are you looking for from partners, really?
Yeah, we're looking for input from their perspective to build an economic plan that balances those three things I talked about in the Vermont Dream earlier: the economy, the environment, and equity. And all three of those perspectives should be represented in how we do economic development. We want to really examine the contributions from all the sectors of our economy. It's not, economic growth isn't just driven by tech innovation and entrepreneurship or real estate development, but there's so much to sort of the fabric of Vermont, the strength of Vermont that is already here, as you were saying, Aiden. I'm sure people think about the agricultural community here in Vermont, and that's certainly a strength. We have an amazing creative economy. The contributions of our nonprofit sector are really world-class as well. So as much as possible, anyone that has something to contribute, I'd love to listen. I think, again, if we talk about how to carry out putting together an economic plan, it's leading by listening.
Yeah. No, I think that leading by listening is definitely the way to get people engaged. If you can get the community to engage with the work you're doing and make them feel like it is also the work they are doing, then going back to that whole earlier comment about you don't want your plan to just sit on a shelf or be a 100-page PDF. If you have these people go through, work on it, and the community feels like it's their ideas, then they will implement them. And it's a lot easier to have actual boots on the ground do it than yell at someone in the Capitol and pray that you can get someone to do it that way.
Yeah. One of the primary reasons why we feel like it's the right time and we're a good organization that's positioned to help lead this effort is because we exist outside of government. Economic plans that are developed within government are vulnerable to being thrown out when there's a new administration.
Yeah.
Strategically, from a political perspective, it might be good to distance oneself from a previous administration, and part of that thinking might be to throw out the plan and come up with a new one. But if we really want to pursue a vision for Vermont that's successful over the long term, there has to be a durability outside of political cycles, and that's one of the primary motivating factors to pursue this effort.
I love that. I love that whole process. Like, you build the community up, you have the community be a part of it, and the community not only goes and follows through the plan because they created it, it's their plan, but they also enforce their legislators to follow through with the plan because that is their constituency. They have to listen to the community, and if the community wants to follow the plan, the legislators will follow the plan. That's beautiful, and I love that so much.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad that's your impression of it.
I mean, it makes sense. It makes complete sense on so many levels. I love it. Like, community is so important. Like, going back to what you said like earlier, one of the things Vermont has going for it is how close-knit everything is, how everyone knows everyone, and there's a high sense of community, not only in every little like town and municipality, but also across the entire state. And like building off of that asset and using that to create like change for Vermont is an amazing thought process, and I love it. This has been a very, very fun conversation for me. I hope
Been fun for me too.
I guess as we kind of wrap up, I want to ask, like, is there any final thoughts you have? Are there any like special projects, anything like coming super soon that you want to highlight? Anyone that's like been super helpful for you throughout your journey, or even right now that you want to shout out, give a little highlight to? This is your time.
Yeah, I'll give a quick shout out to Betsy Bishop, president at the Vermont Chamber of Commerce, as a leader in the business community, advocating on behalf of businesses. She's really leaned into DEI work. And I want to come back to something I said earlier in terms of the environment, equity, and the economy, and how often these perspectives are pitted against each other to push a particular narrative. And really, for us to be successful moving forward and have a thriving future that works for all Vermonters, we need to have a synthesis and synergy of all of these areas. And I think that the work that Betsy and the Chamber are doing authentically in the DEI space show that intersection between the economy and equity. And then with my future-oriented lens on, my background is in the environment. As I mentioned earlier, I was an environmental studies major at Middlebury. So if we think about the long-term sort of viability of the state compared to what's happening on a global scale with climate change, if we think that the climate change models are even partially accurate, then we know that Vermont it's going to be a place of refuge, right? We see wildfires increasing season after season out west. Coastal areas are under threat. And I think there's going to be a migration of people to Vermont, and I would hope that we are prepared for it when it happens. And I think there's still work to do to be able to firmly answer yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. This was an amazing interview. I had a wonderful time. I'm going to harass you more and we'll chat more after this. This
sounds good.
Viewers, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this. Next week is Patricia Preston from Vermont Council on World Affairs. It'll be a very fun interview with her as well. Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon.
Say one more thing for the viewers. If you want to get in touch with me, my email address is kchu@vtfuturesproject.org.
Thank you.